welcome, Susan. I've been really, really looking forward to this conversation. Absolutely. Last night, while I was reading your About page, I found myself just jotting down all kinds of notes, and I can really tell that we're going to get into some interesting paths to kind of wander down. So, I know that many of my listeners already know you, but I'd love you to introduce yourself, share a little bit about you, where you're at, and the jewelry you make.
Well, I'll just start off more basic. I grew up in a jewelry family, not my parents, but my grandfather started a jewelry business in the 1930s, and he was European and Jewish and had to leave Europe for all kinds of reasons, but I think his religion was probably the reason. And him and his brother had the privilege of doing apprenticeship in Cologne, Germany, although they didn't live there. When their father passed away, he was very young when he died, and the older brothers, who I think were 19 and 20 at the time, then they had an invitation, at least that's what history says. They're not here for me to check, but that they were invited to go apprentice with this known master jeweler in Cologne. And I think they probably apprenticed, if the story is true, for 3 months or something. It was a very short period of time. And from there, they decided they would be jewelers, not jewelry artists, jewelers, and that they would come to the United States through Ellis Island and one by one, bring the rest of their family to the United States. And they actually did that. And they moved, of all places, to Detroit because I guess there was a Jewish community that would be welcoming to them there. And, it's like there were duplexes and triplexes, whatever you call it. Like all the families lived upstairs and downstairs, and, your brother would marry my sister, that kind of.
Yes. Very much like my husband's Greek family. They were in Detroit too. Same thing. Came over from Ellis, went to Detroit.
Right. Oh, really? To Detroit? Oh, that's
yeah.
Probably ate at some establishment of some cousins. Yeah. Like the Greek families had these restaurants, the Chaldean people had these, we had this, it was really
right.
Cool. But anyway, they started a business. And when I was a little kid, when I went to stay with my grandparents, we would go to downtown Detroit, which is where their business was. And it was my grandfather and his brother. And then they went in different directions. The business still it's in its fourth generation now, and it's still in Michigan. It's still in the Detroit area. So anyway, that's a short and the long story. But, going to my grandfather's shop when we were little, the big thrill was rolling pennies through the rolling mill. And,
oh, wow.
And then we would have these little quizzes about, if you looked at a purple stone, what was it? If you looked at a red, so it was like I said on my website, I think I still have this on there, that, the language that I learned growing up with that family was a language of gemology, although I don't have any formal training, but knowing all the names of the stones, that was like learning another language. And very early on, everyone in my family knew that if you were looking at something red, it might be a ruby, or if you were, and it was just a sweet kind of thing. But I don't think there were any women in that business besides the partners or spouses of the people that owned the business. And I think the women handled the money. And, there's some old pictures I have of like women in these fancy dresses that look way too tight in the waist, and they have their hands on their hips, like they just run the place. And then the men that worked in the back, they wore 3-piece suits with their aprons over it, and all their equipment looks the same as the equipment we use today. It was just older, and all lined up on these benches, and they all looked like they were about to have a seizure because they probably had to sit still for a long time to take pictures. But I can't believe it was like it was as dirty as any studio can be. And yet they were wearing these 3-piece suits, like in the back. And their burnout oven was like a pizza oven. It was gigantic, and their rolling mills were gigantic. And, they did everything by themselves, like hand fabricating and casting. And then in the front, it looked like the salespeople looked like gangsters, like they were in an old-timey movie where they were going to go out and shoot up they weren't carrying guns to my knowledge, but they had these big like overcoats and three-piece, and this was just the vibe of the place. And the cabinets were these heavy oak cabinets with watches and wedding rings, and so that was my first introduction to jewelry. And to my knowledge, women could not learn to be jewelers back then. And my parents, at least my father, whose father was the jeweler, said, "Oh, don't study art, you'll never make a living." I grew up in
Yes.
be a somebody. So I became a social worker, which also didn't make it. But at least
Yes.
I wasn't a jeweler, which was like, okay. So so I had to find my way back, and it took me about 45 years to 50 years to crawl back into wanting to explore more about jewelry. So after my kids were, in college and whatever, and I had another profession as a psychotherapist, that I had my own business, and I did that for many years. I finally took a jewelry class, and that was probably around 13 years ago, and maybe a few years longer ago. And I just always had this dream that I was going to get good at it. And the it was never supposed to be a business. It was just supposed to be a fun thing, like so many people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, I always said that initially I went into it so that I could stay home with my children because I did not want to go back into the office.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this point that it was like, if I could just make enough money to pay for the material so that I could do this every day, that was the idea of success. And, as you move along, that changes. But I'm kind of back at that same space again. It's like, if I can just keep satisfying my pocketbook enough to make and continue to do the things I love, like this podcast, that to me is like the definition of success for myself anyways.
Yeah.
I love that story. I love that, this has kind of been in your blood for many years. And similarly, my mother was very much like, you take a path that you can make money at and be secure. And I understand that. That was something very, very important at the time. And I'm glad that I had that, especially after my divorce. That was really important when my children were or my child at that time was young. But yeah, the idea that you couldn't be financially sustainable as a jeweler or jewelry artist, I'm glad to see that that's changing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's still, for so many people, especially right now with the costs of metal, therein lies that conversation of what it is to be successful. Does that mean you pay your bills, or does that mean you love what you do? Or, there's so many iterations of what it is to be successful as an artist in any medium. And so I was always happy that I had another source of income when I first started making jewelry. And so, I'm not officially retired from my other job, but I think it would be really stressful, even if I was, whatever that means to be financially successful as a jeweler, that the scale of the business would have to be large enough to be able to produce enough. And then do you become the designer? Do you become the artist? Do you want to keep your hands in the mix? Do you want to mass produce things? All of us have these questions, right?
Yes.
And so
these are things we talk about all the time here. And it looks different for everybody. What is it that you need? Are you a single parent and you need to pay for your child's education and your mortgage? Or, perhaps you have a supportive partner that can take some of that weight away. It does look different for everybody. And I think that's honestly some of the beauty of what we do, is that it is something that we can create for our own needs, and we can direct, our business in a way that suits us. And still have that freedom,
I do think though that the stage of life that we're in really allows for a different experience. And if I was in my early 30s, let's say, when this was my primary profession, we would be having a very different conversation And
Yeah.
I didn't have, I didn't have a partner in my marriage where, some people would say, oh, you can afford to be a jeweler because you have another partner who can pay your way, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't my situation. It is not currently my situation, but I drive a very old car. I have made choices in my life that allow me to live very freely, and it's not
Yeah.
dictated by how, if you will, successful. And,
Yeah.
and yeah.
So what feels successful for you at this point in life? I mean, what feeds you?
Well, I think, I actually took about 8 months out of my studio. It was sort of life driven and not a conscious decision that I made, but for a number of reasons, really stepped out of doing this higher productivity kind of jewelry making. I got a chance
Mhm.
to step back. So for me now, success feels like having the privilege of making art because I want to, so art for art's sake, as people say. And
Mhm.
that expression for me is jewelry. And if people want to buy my work, I'm thrilled when people, still after all these years, when somebody buys something, I love that. Of course, and it used to define my success, whether or not I could sell my work. And then two books come up. One is Big Magic, which was
Mhm.
a great book for some people to read in the art world. And another is an older book called Art and Fear. Fear.
Yep. I've read that. Mhm.
So the
Yes.
books, kind of in a very different generational sense, said things that were very similar to me. And it gave me all this permission to um, divorce myself from the idea that to be successful meant that I would have to make a living, a primary living, being an artist. And what I heard in those two books was one, artists make art because they can't not. And the
Mhm.
that came out of Big Magic was this illustration of her marriage to the part of herself that was an artist, and basically the voice of support to that part of herself. Of course, this is my paraphrase. For the voice of her support to herself is, I will always support you, meaning I'll support the artist in you. I'll get a waitressing job. I'll do whatever it takes because I love that part of you, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think like it gives me the chills even when I hear myself reference that, because I think we fall away from that, and
Oh, yeah.
then people think they're not successful because they're not making a living making art. Um,
Yeah. I I still to this day have my own demons with it. It's like I'm in a very different place. I don't have to show up and be a brand anymore. I don't have to do things a certain way. But when you're taught this is the path where your value lies, and you know the notoriety and financial gain with that, and the fact that you can support yourself regardless, that is what a successful artist looks like. All of that is always in the back of my head, and when I can get rid of that, you'll see complete changes in my work at times.
mhm.
And then that eats at me as well. It's like, well, that doesn't look cohesive to everything else. But I'm really starting, and I think again, because of the increases in material costs, the difficulty in getting stones right now, um, just coming off of summer where I slow down anyways, I'm really starting to sink back into that. It's okay to just do what makes you happy.
Mhm.
And, you know, if I don't make the money, it's okay. Right now, the money just means I can go away on vacation
Right.
for part of the winter, and if that changes, it's okay, as long as I can pay my bills and still feel really, really fulfilled. And that really spurs some desire for exploration. And isn't that what it's all about, as an artist, isn't that really what it's all about?
Yeah, that's the thrill, and also um, the the source of so much uncertainty and anxiety in people who are primarily making a living doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the question is jewelry purchasing essential, and, we went through some of that during COVID, and then just in terms of the conversation we have with ourselves about what it is to be an artist. And,
Mm-hmm.
and my expression of being a jewelry making artist has changed, of course, like everything else changes with time. But if you're going to participate in a world where you're going to be selling jewelry, small scale or a very large scale, there's a lot of work to be done. And there's a, I don't want to say a game to play, but there's a model for how to do that. Right? And if you listen to it and it doesn't resonate with who you are, and you try to force yourself into that space,
Right.
I think it's high risk for killing our creativity.
Exactly.
There are
Mm-hmm.
people who have a wonderful sense of how to run a business, and I saw Joy Cruz on your podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and she was one of the first people that I wanted to get to connect with before all this was so easy, before social media was so easy. And, I took a class with her a million years ago. Went up on this little adventure to meet with her because she seemed to have this business awareness. At the same time, she was leaving medical.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't leaving my profession, but there was that similarity. Wonder if I'll ever be able to be like her. She was very much somebody who I held on to as a vision of if I was going to ever start a jewelry business, because like I could barely sew. And we don't know each other well, but I've always watched her as time goes on, and I think we have those connections with people.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned is she's a much better business person than I think.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that she's scaled her business and the way that she's been able to take care of herself and her family as a jeweler, and I don't know that many people who have been able to do that successfully, and the amount of work that it takes to make that happen is nonstop. And to always have a vision to do the next thing, and to have your website do this, and to have your, and I just got to a point where I thought, I'm not sure I want to work, which is the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. I definitely pivoted with my own business substantially. And yeah, listening to Joy, there is definitely a lot of grit. And whether you like it or not, this is what you're going to do to keep it going.
Yeah.
And I just was never one. I don't want to say that I don't have grit. I just didn't feel that path was right for me and how I wanted, just as you were saying, it changes your relationship with your work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was already feeling the joy being sucked out of doing that. And, my career in dentistry before, that's exactly what happened very quickly. And I didn't want to fall into that. And I think that's been the key for longevity for me, is just, constantly kind of balancing that need to support the business and support my creativity at the same time.
I think we're lucky if we can find that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to also, I would say used to, but it's a common thing. I thought, okay, well, I'll make jewelry, and then I started making jewelry, and of course, I probably thought that I was much better at the time than Naivete helped me. And I look back at early shows that I did where my display was so pretty. It's like a couple seashells on a purple tablecloth, whatever, with little chopped up pieces of tree branch for my, like it was
right.
going to be. And I look back at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually did shows like that, And now I look at other people's displays at shows and I think, gosh, I don't know how they think about it. They can be like those all the mental gymnastics, and then when I get stuck in thing of comparing yourself, whether it's your work or your displays or
Yeah.
the way you do your website or the way all of it. It is just for me exhausting. And I spent a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time pushing myself to be better at it. And then I felt like I was just hustling, like first I couldn't
Yep.
get into the shows that I wanted to do. Then I could get into the shows that I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure I wanted to spend my time there. It was so conflicted. And my happiest space is when I can just light a torch and see what happens, and
Yeah. I mean, that's like, there's parts of the business I enjoy.
Mhm.
I enjoy the storytelling.
Mhm.
I love hate with photography,
Yeah.
you know. I think you can tell a beautiful story with it, and I love it when I get a really good picture of something that I'm like, okay, this is pretty good.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, you're doing it all yourself, and it just it feels like so much all the time.
Because it is.
And
Yes.
yeah, exactly. It is. And it's on your mind all the time too. So it's always occupying the space in your head where it feels like you can never really relax. For years I didn't look at I mean, I kept my field of vision pretty narrow, especially until the podcast. And then it was like, oh, discovering all these people. And it is hard not to go, oh my God, their work is just incredible. And I'm not doing anything like that. And oh, there's so many jewelry artists out there. How can I compete in the sea of people? And, sales are slow right now or whatever it is, you can really go down a dark path with it, and you have to keep those boundaries around your mental health and the things that feed your soul too, where you can just go in and enjoy what you do and not think about it.
And
Yeah.
there's a part of that feels and sounds to me, you know, very privileged and very, like not everybody can do that, right?
Sure.
And so as I look back over, it's not been that many years, maybe 12 to 15 years, and I've had interest in making jewelry. But as I've touched all these things to try to be a jeweler, whatever that is, including teaching and running part of the Metal Arts Guild, which is all volunteer run, but here in Georgia. So I was talking to my husband about doing this podcast, and he said, well, Susan, you need kind of dual career. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you want to bring jewelry making to other people, and you want to
Mhm.
be a maker. And I think the essence of what I'm so attracted to in this work, whether I'm by myself or with other people, is the same thing that I was interested in when I worked as a therapist, is that you really do get to witness some magic, right? I
Mhm.
call it alchemy, but when I'm teaching, it's not me. It's not me feeling successful by saying, here, this is what you need to do if you want to make this thing. It's watching the joy that happens when someone does
Mhm.
something, right? And I think that's,
Yeah.
if I'm addicted to anything, it's the magic that happens in those moments. And if I'm by myself, I'm doing a little happy dance, or I'm destroying something and finding some great pleasure in that too, right? Um,
Yeah.
but just that, and then the connection, right? Like we would not
Yeah.
be talking to each other if we didn't have an interest in it. And later in life, where do you meet wonderful people? So all of that,
Yeah.
like we have to learn a lot of things if you want to even have a successful website, right? You have to learn a little bit about photography and marketing and this and that. And that's like in my book, that's just way too much work.
Yeah.
Dabble at it. I can find someone else to help me. I'll get a second job to pay them to do it. I mean, I'm not interested in being great at it. I just want to make beautiful things and find a way to put it out there, and share the joy of it. You don't have to like my work. I want to tell you how exciting it is to do this. I want everyone to make jewelry. And it looks like the world is falling in that direction. It does seem like everybody wants to make jewelry. So,
But I think, as you were talking about sharing it with someone when you're teaching and that joy of seeing them. It's like I feel that same like, okay, now we're connected because you feel it too. You understand how magical this is. And that's the passion of any craft, any art is there's something there that's really hard to explain to someone unless they catch that bug too.
Yeah. But the freedom, I think for women too, and I don't know, this is probably true of everybody, but for me, it's like, I don't know if I'm great at using power tools. I have a respect for my fingers, and I'm not always the most. But in a studio, like I don't even light my barbecue out on the back porch. I'm terrified of the propane tank, but I have tanks in my house that I light without, you know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's this like edgy, dangerous, potentially dangerous, full of fire. I love working with all the elements, and I do think that's this alchemical thing. Like I just think it touches a really primal part of us, and and it's like if I don't know how to do anything else, then
I love that.
I'll just go melt stuff. My happy place is a scrap pile and a torch. I don't know what's going to come out of it. I cook that way from scratch. I always think my jewelry making is like how I cook. You open the fridge and you see what's in there, and then you make something amazing. And when I go into my studio, maybe I don't always make something amazing, but I'm like, what do I have here? And if I can't see it, it's not,
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you how you come up with your designs because it feels really intuitive. And, I've always been drawn to your work, but there was one piece in particular. It was a necklace and it had a large oval earth toned, I want to say maybe a jasper, and it looked like maybe a mammoth.
yeah,
Almost looked like a bone,
it
but
is.
that piece was
Yeah.
spectacular, and I'd love to know, well, yes, one, is your process pretty intuitive, which I think it probably is, and two, what draws you to this kind of, raw beauty?
Oh, well, I think we do what we can, right? Like I like to think that where I don't necessarily have words, and I love words. I love to write, I love to talk, but where I don't have words, there are ways to put things together that speak, right? So, jewelry making is a wordless story, really. And that particular piece was, I don't know how it came together. I have a customer who's an amazing human who sends me stones. She loves buying stones and she sends me stones, and I have so many of them. And every now and then she'll say, "Hey, can you make me something?" And I'll say, "Yeah," but I have this whole tray of stones that are hers, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
"What do you want me to do?" And then one day and I did that big oval stone was beautiful, but it was like big and I didn't know what to do with it. And I wanted something small and beautiful around it. And it was just a combination of things where things landed on the bench top at the same time,
Yep.
and then and it's like putting together a puzzle, right? So that's the intuitive part. Like these play well together. And then there's like, but how the hell am I going to make that happen? So sometimes it takes me forever to put something together. Chances are
Yes.
I'm doing a lot of things that I've never done before all at the same time. And when I have to make earrings, even though they're fun to make, like by the time I've drawn it or I've envisioned it and I've seen it laid out on my desk, I feel like I already made it. And then the making it is like, oh, how many times do I have to do this? And I have, right? I haven't made it yet. And then the second earring, asymmetry might be a popular, trendy way to do earrings, but I feel like I'm old enough. Like I'll be 70 pretty soon, in a few years, and it's like, life is short. I already made that earring. Why should I make a second one that looks exactly like that?
Right.
So it's like I'm the one and done something, and so the work is not always cohesive. It's just whatever I feel like.
Oh, no. I absolutely, I mean, that resonates with me so much. I don't know about you, but I find, and I don't have a lot of the same stones. It's rare if I have like matching pairs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but part of the fun is making that one that, that idea came and it's exciting, and that one feels really good, and then trying to figure out, what am I going to do for that second one?
Right.
How am I going to make this work together, play nice, whether it's the same length or maybe a different length, different materials. That's really, really fun for me.
And then, when it doesn't work, right? Like I have a couple of things that have been on my kitchen table for about 2 weeks now, boxes of some stones and little containers. Because if I can't see them, then I can't work with them. And if they're in my studio, they're probably in a safe, or they're in a drawer, or they're someplace safely placed. And I don't have enough room to put stuff all over the place, because there's always more stuff than we can use in a small space. So on my kitchen table, I just like dump it all out, and it's like playing, right? And then I get my idea, and then I have to go make it. When I'm making it, it's like, you know how it is when something just like, I don't know how I'm going to connect these things, or if I do connect them, they're not going to look so pretty. Or I don't know why I thought I could set all these tiny little stones. I think about it as a shader.
And I really don't want to.
But then I challenge myself, because, if we're comfortable, maybe we can grow, right? So part of inviting all the people to come teach at the Metal Arts Guild is, I have my people that I love following, and I'm like, oh, I would love to learn how to do that. Jesus, so I just invite that person to come teach, and then I can learn that, right? And I've made some sweet friends doing that.
Very nice.
Like, why did I think I could set all those teeny tiny stones? Well, it's probably because Sam Warman came and taught us, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? But then there's one more person I can call if I get in the gym, and that's the beauty of the connections that we
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. I wish we don't have a guild here. We don't have too many jewelry artists around here that I'm aware of. So that, I feel like.
But they're hiding out. You just don't know them because you don't have the, right? Like if
yeah, maybe.
Just inventing more work for you, but go ahead and start with.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of things that go through my head, and I'm like, no, that's not mine. I can't. I've got enough right now.
It's a little bit more. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things when I'm actually designing, and I'm moving the pieces together, I'm moving them around and taking bits away and adding bits. It's like, I always think of it as like you're really trying to get to that itch on your back and you can't get it, and finally do, and you're like, that is it. That's exactly what I needed. Is that like that for you?
Yeah. And then sometimes, you wake up the next day, it's like, I don't know how to draw, like doing artist renderings of jewelry. I don't know how to do that. Like my drawing is sort of like Hangman meets, stick person. I don't have that developed in me, and I don't feel bad about it. I also don't know how to do math. There are just some things that I have to love myself through. But anyway, drawing and complicated math is not my thing. And so with respect to my limitations, right? Like I'll try something. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then I take a picture of something that I've put together that I think is so incredible. And I wake up the next day and it does nothing for me. Right. So then we start over again. But when it's right, then you get that spark inside that's like, yeah. That's and then maybe there are challenges along the way that shift something. But
yeah,
you know when it's right.
Are you feeling any challenges currently within your work or your business?
Well, the business side of it is, this will sound, from a business person's perspective, it will sound very unbusinessy, which is the business of my business is that I make things. I make things. I make them available for people to buy. And I do custom work. But the custom work is with just a few people who are, like, I guess I can call them collectors of my work, but they give me so much freedom. So they're like, I just want something with this, whatever it is. And then I come up with 20 different ways to do it. And if they don't feel comfortable giving me the freedom to do it, then I can't, because I don't work.
Yes.
It just takes up too much space and creates too much anxiety. And it's, when someone says, "Oh, I love everything you do, just go ahead and do your thing." Well, they don't really love everything you do. They can't possibly love everything you do, right? And so then you try to do something to satisfy that freedom, and it's not right for the person. And so how many times do you want to try? So really, when someone says, "Here, you can go do this," then I do.
Yeah.
And when I'm making things now for my business, like what's the inventory I have, is from now on, it's going to be what I love. To go in there, my studio, like go in that space and see what comes out of it, and to have self-respect, and to have passion, and to have interest. And if someone wants to buy it, that'll be the business, but I'll put it out there. I'll make it available. I used to do a lot of shows. If I say, "Oh my God, that's so much work in such an uncertain time right now," and getting prepared for it, I too can run anxious, right? So preparing for it and dealing with all the self-talk that goes along with, "Why are you doing this? Why do you think all of that stuff?" And then the getting ready, and then the setting things up a certain way, and then all the pricing and the inventory, and then standing there. And if you have a great show, it's like, I guess, doing crack. I've never done crack, but it's probably like a big
short high.
And then a show that's not good brings up, I'd say, the worst stuff to me. The insecurity, the imposter stuff, all of it. It just comes up, and I'm thinking, I don't want to spend my weeks having conversations with that part of myself. I know about those parts of myself, and I want to find a way to love all of it, to not cut myself off from the joy of what I do, because I have an active mind.
I think so many people are going to resonate with that. I have so many friends that, really spend a lot of time and get a bulk of their sales from doing shows.
Yeah.
But, just I know after listening to them that just what you said, the good shows make you feel good and make you come back. The shows that don't go well for whatever reason make you question, everything with it.
Right. So there are some local shows that I'll do in Atlanta. And there are shows I say that I give my money to every year, hoping they'll say yes. But then I realized that I have this FOMO kind of thing, and I've said this out loud to people, and I hope it doesn't take me in a direction that I want it to take me in, but I want to be invited. I definitely want to be invited. So I'll apply to shows that are like, maybe I got in one time and I haven't gotten in again, and I want to do it again because it was so much fun. Or maybe I think, "Oh, I wonder if I could get into this show," and I throw my hat in the ring. When I get the invitation, I don't always want to go. I think I just want to be invited sometimes, because it used to be a measure of my value as an artist. The more I learn about myself, and the more I learn about the process, I don't want that to be the announcement of whether I'm valuable or not. I want to live in a place that honors my value, and whether or not I do a show is just, who knows? It's a crapshoot. Even of the best of the jewelers I know aren't necessarily getting into the shows they want to do, right? And so that whole thing, I just don't want to live in a place where the outside dictates my value, and
as you're, talking about this, I was just kind of thinking of, maybe some other professions, that, you get up every day, you go to work, you do the same thing. Maybe you learn a little bit more about it. But I think as a business owner, and especially as a business owner who is an artist as well, there's this constant, like, learning about yourself. I learned where I didn't want to do things. I learned where to put up some boundaries. I learned where I still need that value, or I still succumb to certain things that look attractive that really aren't. And I think that's one of the neat things is this, there's a reflection of ourselves in our work somehow, whether it's quiet or more literal. But then within just our own personal growing, there's that reflection, with our work and what we choose to do. And I find that really rewarding and fascinating at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And then the thing about, what we would say in modern language, caring about what other people do, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some very cavalier people who over the years say, I don't really give a flip about what someone thinks about me or my work, and I'm thinking I care deeply about what people think and about my work. And at the same time, none of us really deserve to be driven by that, right? I want it to be honest. Like if I'm making work, I want it to be an honest expression. I don't want to be, it's not a flipping houses for me. It's like, I don't want to make 50 pairs of earrings that are all the same because they sell. I don't, that is a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
But that to me isn't about satisfying this thing that is my version of artistry, right? Like mine is much more something to be really my DNA lessons about it. So it might take me forever to make something that's really meaningful to me, but that's very different from being able to pay my bills.
Right. It took me a long time to recognize what stories were coming out of me with my work. It took me a really long time. And once I kind of understood that, I was like, oh yeah, that's it. Do you feel that your work reflects stories for you?
I do. I had a very interesting conversation a couple weeks ago with someone, and we were talking about emotion, and it was a very therapeutic conversation as somebody who makes art. She was challenging me around my emotional expression, and there was this really bittersweet kind of falling into the truth of my existence right now because our world is so different. And us, but it's like, what are you going to do, right? You just hope you don't get up in an avalanche. But my whole life, my politics, my ideology, the way I live in the world has been very much about supporting the underdog, so to speak. And if I take myself into my studio right now and I'm honest in my artistic expression, then there's a lot, I have to call it what it is. It's rage that's living in me. And I know how much I want to quiet that because it's not my business, or I don't want to put my politics all over my Instagram.
Yeah, I don't do that either.
Right? But I also know why I don't do it, and the reason I do it isn't always as satisfying. There's a part of me that thinks I need to be loud and proud about it. And then there's another part of me that says, that's not work out so well for you. The reason I don't do it now is because it doesn't, people that know me know those things about me. People that don't know me are not necessarily going to have any value added to their lives for knowing that. And my biggest fear is that it creates more dissension, not that it brings people together. But if I'm going to go, like, watch for it soon because you'll know if I'm getting honest. You'll see some very spiky, edgy, like I'll try to make it beautiful, but it's going to be chaotic because that's what it feels like in me now, And in the past, I've kind of done my work in what I would call a congruent way that's honest. You don't have to know what it is I'm saying, but I can look at it and say that's a fair representation of what I feel. But in this shift in our world right now, I haven't been doing that. In fact, I think that's why I've been out of my studio for longer than I've been in the year 2025, because I don't know how to digest all of this.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people are feeling that. I mean, there's definitely a collective unease and I keep politics out of my business. I always have. One, because I feel like with my work, I want to put beauty out in the world. There's a lot of places if you want to go, I mean, and even within like the Slowmade Collective, within the podcast, you're never going to hear me share my thoughts on it because I want my work to bring a solace or to touch something in you that you need and you can bring that story into it, or within the podcast or the collective. I want that to be a nourishing space. I want, these conversations to fill you up because there's a lot of crap out there that can take you in another way and, add to the anxiety. And that's not what I want. That's not what I need. This is as much, I always say I am so lucky. I have so many people that will send me messages after every episode and say, this is exactly what I wanted to hear right now. And I think I'm the lucky one. I got to sit down with somebody that, I love and that loves their work and talk to them, and ask them whatever it is that I want.
Well,
That fills my soul. Yeah.
There is a sacredness about it. And so when we were talking about people coming together and being able to witness kind of magic, whatever level of magic it is, it could be the first time someone saw something, or it could be really finely doing something that you've been challenging yourself to do because it's too techniquey, or because it's whatever it is that's hard for us to do, that this is a quiet, satisfying way to challenge ourselves and to find, I call it finding an opportunity to spend time with this magic, which is a form of meditation. It's very primal, like, because we're working with the elements, right, in all different forms. And then maybe there's something that's a really heartfelt expression that comes through that, and that, like you said, it can bring more beauty to the world.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to protect those spaces right now. And when we bring people into those spaces, same thing.
Yeah.
Whether they're consuming your work, or they're looking at it, or they want to take a class, I think we're all hungry for finding a place inside ourselves right now to be something other than that noise out there.
Yeah.
And
I feel like the studio is kind of that sacred space too.
Yeah.
Whether magic is happening, but it's also a place that I can care for my soul.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this challenge, like as an artist, right? Because our art is always an expression of our emotional state, or any inner conversation we might be having. And the challenge to me is I don't have to speak it. I don't have to tell whatever my story is about the work. Or maybe I'm just sitting there throwing plates against a wall equivalent. You know what I mean? That if there's something that needs to come out, I can find a way to do that in my work and have it still be interesting or beautiful, or, it might be very spiky. I keep thinking of those, those fish. I don't know if they're puffer fish, but they look like porcupine fish, right?
Yes.
That's how I feel right now. Like my work is going to be like, it's going to be puffy, but maybe there'll be little diamonds in the puffs, or there'll be something, it'll be edgy, but then there'll be a place for beauty. And it may not always be that way, but right now I don't want to quiet that voice, because I think where else am I gonna express it? And it's not attached to a political party, and it's not attached to whether or not people that have some SNAP benefits are going to get their food this month. It's just attached to what's bubbling up in me. And it doesn't take the form of a political commentary, but I want it to be honest, if that makes any sense. Whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say then that's kind of your personal philosophy around making, and kind of that beacon that guides you is just staying honest to yourself?
Well, I don't know if it's always been that way. I don't think that I challenged myself to need to be more honest, but in the framework of making art anyway, I don't think I ever felt Like I
Mm.
look at our world and I think there's a that hasn't appeared yet. It's like the way we've been doing things forever doesn't seem like it's going to work anymore. So we're going through these transformations, and whatever we learn through this, we'll find some. I do think it's going to be a call to bring people together, like the some to bring us
I hope so.
together. You know, so
I
yeah,
I did read, well, I didn't read it. I had been told through a lecture about a book that I can't remember what the name of it was, but it talked about throughout history, there is like a 40-year period, and there's a cycle that swings. And you can trace back like what was happening in history where either one side came to power or another side came to power. And within the swing, it would just keep going back and forth. I think it was called the pendulum. And when I heard about this was probably 15 years ago when we were starting to move up the swing again. So at that 20-year mark, then things go back the other way. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how society morphs and changes. And I do think with all the unhappiness that there has to be a shift,
yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
not to go political, but I just feel like there has to be a shift in society because we really can't maintain this without, some sort of self-destruction. Yeah. And that's why I think what we do is so important, because there are people, going back to kind of, you know, the discussion around whether jewelry is needed or, a purchase that somebody needs. I feel like, no, maybe, and maybe this is my own bias, but maybe somebody doesn't need to go to Amazon or someplace and buy, a pair of mass produced earrings. But people are still really, really hungry for that connection and something special
Mm-hmm.
and something that means something to them or that they can build their story around. And I think that's what we give. And that is very, very valuable.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to remember. I, I think when I first started making jewelry and said something, what's it like to shift from paying your bills by making jewelry versus working in healthcare? And my initial response was that in healthcare, and you'll have this frame of reference, I'm sure, in healthcare, I felt like I was really happy. I mean, I could do service that I could provide where people would work through really painful things and they would become happier, more functional in their lives, or more aligned with themselves. And making jewelry felt frivolous in contrast at first. And someone said to me, if you look back for thousands and thousands of years, people have been using jewelry or body adornment of some sort to mark sacred times in their lives, or to mark, rites of passage, or to commemorate somebody or something. Think about this tribal kind of way of connecting with
Mm-hmm.
but body adornment for sure. And it made me feel better. And then I started thinking about things that I had over the years, whether it was my grandma gave me something, or all that sentiment is held in a piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be of something that's of great value financially. It's just it holds something for us, right?
Right.
And so I do think that that's what people are drawn to. I mean, maybe they just need a little sparkly thing to wear or something. But if they're looking for something that touches them, that's where that's where we can
I, again, this is my personal,
have.
I think my personal observation, but, I feel like each person that comes and purchases a piece, they're drawn to it for some reason. and it's a feeling.
Right.
It's not, oh, there's a stone. There's a feeling that they're getting from it. Just is similar to what you were talking about with, the history of personal adornment and talismans and whatnot. And I feel like when you bring an intention to create something from your soul, that someone else is going to connect with that on some different unconscious level, soul to soul. And that's, what they're purchasing in the end is that moment, that's something deeper. And whether or not they can even say that or why they're attracted to your work, I really believe it's something that speaks within art. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does. It does. And over the years since I've started making jewelry, I know I am not a consumer. I'm not my customer, as people say sometimes.
yeah.
I'm not really a consumer, and I don't even wear jewelry. I like making it. I loved it, and I love playing with it and taking out the box or the little velvet pouch or whatever it is. I wear it because I have it, but in a studio, I'm not sitting there with fancy rings and bracelets and earrings. And if I go out, yeah, I'll wear something. But having it is different than wearing it. And I recently bought this from a friend. It's not even like my stuff, But I love him. I wanted to buy something that he made because I love him, and I wear it proudly, and it's beautiful, and I get a lot of compliments on it. But the reason that I did it was to honor the connection. Not because I happen to love the piece, but it would be just as beautiful and awesome. It doesn't have to be what I mean?
Yeah.
It might end up on something because it's worth seeing every day. Yeah. So who knows? Right?
Do you think, coming to this a little later in life, that you were blessed with the freedom, that kind of like, I can do what I want, and this is more of a creative exploration?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think like at different ages and different stages, your desires to make your mark or, do something just for yourself. I find like I came to it a little bit later,
Mm-hmm.
but early enough that I still felt like, okay, I need to make this into something.
Uh-huh.
And now the older I'm getting, it's like the more free it is for me to just say, this is just what I want to do today,
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, not to say that I don't wrestle with things from time to time, but I feel like the expectations are on myself are a little different now.
Yeah. I think it would be that way most of us, regardless of what it is that we do. But I felt lucky in that I loved my job from the time I was free until I retired 40 something years later, which was a year ago. And so I always had loved it. I loved it in the same way. Making jewelry, I got to go and be witness to things that, like I got to see things that people didn't ever get to see. I was so lucky, to be like with birth every day. I've never, besides my own children, I've never seen someone else give birth. But I did metaphorically do that almost every day for 40 something years, And so always felt super gratified. Like I could see the big picture. So I never felt like I had to stop doing something to do something right. Like I loved what I did. And that was a great blessing. And after 43 years, I'm like, right. I always wanted to be good at it. But and I cherish greatly that was my choice. I'm lucky that I got to do that. But also with jewelry making, it's that same, like I got to keep it honest. I got to keep it clean. I've tried doing the other. I've tried making 100 pieces so that I could do a big show, and it worked out okay, but my heart wasn't happy. I just felt like I was pushing.
So, you worked until very recently.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was never something that you were like, oh, I have to make this a business. Was this, I'm thinking just, you know, I had thought at one point of becoming a therapist, and I thought, no, I'm going to get really sucked into everybody's story, and I'm going to bring that home. And the way I deal with my own inner angst is by working. Do you feel like the jewelry was part therapy for you as well, or just something completely different?
No, it was a great uh, ride along. I never wanted to think that my jewelry was a lesser business because I really worked hard to make it a business. But it was simultaneously like it was at a time in my life where I knew soon, like whether it was a big business or a little business wouldn't matter because I planned to retire from my other job. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a ton of work. I always had more than one job, it wasn't a big money job, but but I did fine with it and I loved it. And so I planned to have my, if you will, retirement be. And so it gave me the freedom to do the jewelry because I wasn't panicking. I was making it, which really gave me the freedom to take risks, you know. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'll do a show. Yeah, I'll do 10 shows. That's going to be doing 10 shows. And then during COVID, back when Instagram was still easy to build, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that was amazing because we were all locked in, and I was using social media platforms to meet people. And then
Yeah.
I fell in love with getting to know people who did what I did, even though they did it differently, right? And that, like, oh my gosh, I knew I wanted to make jewelry, but I never knew that I was going to meet an international crowd of people who I was like falling in love with. Like, this was so
Exactly.
unexpected, and then I feel we're really lucky to have a thing. When I say a thing that brings us together, and
Yeah. And you know what? That's the feeling is so similar, and part of the reason that I really wanted this podcast was there are just so many people doing. I mean, more people than I'll ever get to talk to, and in all different stages, starting to seasoned, um, but they all love it, and I just was like so in awe of everybody. I just wanted to say, "Hey, did you see them? Did you see them?" So that was a way of kind of like, share it. There's enough to go around. I didn't have to protect myself in any way. I didn't really care about that anymore. And it's been a wonderful way to just build community around me. Because now I've known you for a while, but it's like now I feel like I've really known you. That I've
there's
had
an
some time with
intimacy.
you. Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate that. And then the things that we challenge ourselves with, whether it's as a business
Mm,
owner or a creator or a everyday human that has to do 100 million things, that there's this space where we have a kind of place of reference or commonality. And I think the earlier we can shed the not good enoughness stuff that goes along with throwing your hat in the ring somewhere, like when did you get
mhm.
to call yourself an artist? How long do you have to make something for it before you can?
It took me a long time to
I
call myself
remember.
that.
I remember.
Mm,
And it's still hard for me sometimes. Like people will say, "Oh, do you make jewelry?" And it depends who I'm talking to. It's like I used to, like when I go to shows, I'd take off my little badge and I go walk a show. If people don't know me, I
mhm.
don't tell them I make jewelry because then they don't really want to talk, And so I can ask questions. I can say, "Oh my gosh, how is it that you do this?" I don't have to say I know how to do it. I say, and then I'm making a connection with their process, and I think that's really for
I love
me
that.
that it's the seduction almost. It's like what I'm so drawn to is the heart of it.
Mm,
It's not the thing, it's how you fall in love with what you do that I'm attracted
mm.
to. I want to
Me
know. Tell me
too.
about your happiness. Tell me about what wakes you up. I think I was reading. Didn't you write something about you don't get woke up in the middle of the night with ideas, but you remember how you used to, and then when that happens again, it's like
Yeah.
love. Yeah.
There's so many times I go to bed thinking about it. I wake up thinking about it. Every once in a while, there's an idea, I'll dream about it. It's rare.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm always excited,
Right.
But then there's times it's like, okay, I've done this for 3 days. I'm mentally exhausted. I just need to do life here.
Yeah. Right.
I need to clean up my mess that I've have around the house and get some other things done.
Right.
But yeah, this has been such a beautiful conversation,
I loved
Susan.
it.
I
Thank
am
you
so
so much.
grateful for this.
Mhm.
Is there anything before we end today that you wanted to share that I didn't touch upon, or anything on the horizon for you that you wanted to share?
Well, I just, when I get excited about something, my thrill and maybe my shortcoming too is I always want a small parade of people who are going through similar things.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
people. I don't have a gazillion people I think are an introvert with reasonable social skills, but I used to think I was really an extrovert. And so what being a studio artist has taught me is actually my voice is like I get so excited, but the magic happens mostly when I'm by myself in a quiet space. I love being in a room of people making things together. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
women cooking in the kitchen together. And largely, right? We're mostly women
Mm-hmm.
making jewelry. And I want other people to dare themselves to get honest with their hearts right now. Like that's more
I love that.
important to me. And then I would love to see what it is that comes out of it because it will require each of us. We'll have a different challenge. But for me, it's like, forget making the beautiful whatever it is I was going to make. How do you feel? Make that. Make how you feel right now. Don't make, you know what I mean? It's just like, the beauty is I don't have words for it, but I know how it translates to making it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. I love that. I think this is such an amazing challenge to ask of our community to think about now and to end this on. I mean, I'll certainly go or leave and take this back to the studio with me.
yeah,
So
I would
thank
love
you.
for there to be a collective of people who are risking discomfort. Like, okay, you don't have to talk about it in your wherever, right? You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to post that this is about your something, something. But go do that thing. Go make that thing. And then if you feel like it, tell me about it. That's what that's the kind of direction I want.
You need to create a challenge and put it out
I
there.
know I would, except for that I'm so bad at asking myself to do so many things and then like I might wake up tomorrow and say, why did I do
You and I are, yeah, we
there's a
would be
lot of
good
us on
studio
that.
mates. Yeah.
That's all. Like
Yeah.
I'll do if you do the challenge, I'll sign up for it, and then maybe I'll do it.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
have in the collective, we've been doing some challenges every month.
Huh.
And it's mostly just to break out of our comfort zone. And, the first one I was kind of like, yeah, that sounds great. I'll do it. And of course, last minute, I didn't do it. And during one of the co working sessions, one of the girls was working on theirs. And I'm like, fine, I'm just going to do this. And it has been so wonderful because I don't have to think about anything.
Mm.
That's where that turns off and it's like, okay, how would I interpret this? Let's just have fun with this now. And it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of permission in that.
Oh, absolutely. So I know a lot of my listeners already follow along with you, Susan, but I would love you to share how people can best connect with you and see your stunning jewelry.
Well, I'm just like coming out of hibernation again, so a lot of the work is, I mean, I have a website. I try to be, I try to be on Instagram, not so much on Facebook, but um, that's pretty much how you can find it. Well, inventory. Sometimes I'm not as good at putting it out there. You know what I mean? It's
Mm.
some stuff that I've done, and just so sit down and do all the photography. if anybody is sitting on something and they want to make something special, they have an idea for something, or they want to collaborate, like that's what I like. I like talking to people and hearing about something that they envision and trying to access their heart with the thing. So someone will say, I want to make something for me. I'm like, oh, is it her birthday? Is it? No. She passed away 20 years ago. I just want to make. Then I take great freedom and send to me. And it's almost like I'm doing I don't know, like a chart or something, like an astrology chart, only it's not astrology. It's just like, tell me about your heart and what it is that you love about that person, and then make something to symbolize together. So I like to co-create with people as long as there's artistic freedom for me to take particular.
It's such a special process, and yet at the same time, I'm the same way. I need the freedom to do things differently from the last piece too. If I don't, I just broke a stone after it was getting ready to set the last earring of a custom piece and broke the stone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is what happens, and this is another sign that, I need to have a lot of freedom with it. So, well, I will have all of your links in the show notes, and I hope everybody gets in touch with you and just says hello.
This was a real joy. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And I look forward to meeting you in real life.
Oh, yeah, that would be fantastic.
Okay, thank you again. And best wishes.